Hi, and welcome to Ventures Matters TV, episode 5. The series is initiated by KrASIA, a media brand under 36Kara Global, covering innovation news in Asia in Chinese, English, and Japanese. Ventures Matters TV was launched to provide insights about Asian investment patterns and cross-border opportunities. Through this series, we will invite top VCs who are active in their fields to share their opinions on global market trends. I'm really excited to have with me today Ntasha B, partner of Venture Gurukool Capability Fund. As co-founder, she has also made several successful investments in early stage startups such as Ollie, Max My Wealth, and Zapfico. Prior to Venture Gurukool, Ntasha also led the innovation initiative at Indian Private Equity and Venture Capital Association, focusing on supporting early stage ventures and foreign VCs into the Indian market. Could I please, is Ntasha there? Hi, Ntasha. Could I please get you to introduce yourself to our audience today?
Hi, it's a pleasure to be part of KrASIA's VC Matters edition and talk about India and the Indian opportunity and myself. So I am the co-founder and managing partner of Venture Gurukool Capability Fund, which is a CAT1 SEBI registered AIF fund focused on early stage investments in India. I actually co-founded Venture Gurukool 3 years back, and at that time we were doing a lot of proprietary investments in the early stage ecosystem at seed, pre-series A, and even pre-seed investments in very exciting, promising Indian startups, which are looking to disrupt the transactional, day-to-day transactional consumer tech economy through the digital platform, through the app ecosystem, mobile internet ecosystem. Not just from a B2C perspective, but even companies which are helping businesses from offline to online, right? So B2B ventures which are helping with this digitization and transformation for offline retailers and businesses to come online. So we've been investing in B2B and B2C ventures. And now that we have institutional VC fund of Venture Gurukool Capability Fund, which is focused on building capabilities in early stage ventures, we'll be doing more aggressive investments in the early stage ecosystem.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ntasha. I think to start off, perhaps for some of our viewers who are still learning about India's investment landscape, I know you and I have chatted at length about this before, but perhaps you could give us a little bit of background as to what it's like now in terms of who are some of the VCs there, what's the outlook like for some of the local investors as well.
So I think the current pandemic has really redefined how capital has been deployed in the ecosystem. It's been a very cautionary tale, and I think prior to the pandemic, there was an exuberance in the VC ecosystem. 2019 has been a year of exuberance in venture capital with more than 15 billion of investments in VC, which has been at an all-time high. So there's been a lot of exuberance in the ecosystem. A lot of new funds have come in, around 44 new domestic capital, domestic VC funds made some new investments. And there's been a lot of capital which has been going around in 2019. And valuations, of course, were very aggressive and very aspirational. So there's been a lot of correction from that point of view. And I think this current pandemic has really changed the focus on blitz scaling, right, towards unit economics, sustainability, profit, how do you grow organically, and these sort of things, which is actually the crux of any business, so that froth is sort of going away. And right now what we're seeing in the ecosystem is, with the announcements which are coming in, a lot of VCs are looking at investing in their own portfolio or doing follow-on rounds in their own portfolio, because this hit which has happened to the ecosystem, a lot of founders will require the bandwidth or the larger runway to be able to sustain themselves during this time frame. And so what you thought would last you 12 months will not really last you 12 months. You would really need more than that. So you have to really plan for the halt in operations which have happened because of the lockdown, the reduced demand outlook, which you're facing from the consumer side. So you have to keep all that, and of course the burn which you're anyway sustaining, being a early stage or a growth stage venture, right? So you have to really prepare for that and keep that in mind. And these are the sort of things which have panned out. But at the same time, a lot of exciting opportunities have emerged in the edtech space. I think gaming has taken a lot of momentum. Businesses which are helping offline come online, that's also gained a lot of momentum. So there are a lot of exciting opportunities at the same time, you know. So it's a mixed bag from what's happening right now, you know. So you have a lot of investments which are happening in, but they're mostly follow-on rounds. Very few minimal, almost new rounds which are happening. So yeah.
That's really interesting to hear. I think another thing we've spoken about before is that there's quite a lot of co-investing as well in the Indian ecosystem, right? You mentioned that there's about maybe about 80 to 90% of the Indian ecosystem sees the big international VCs who come in. And like you mentioned, there's been a huge growth in local micro funds as well. I was just wondering if you could explain a little bit more as to how this co-investing model works, and how does that help both the local VCs as well as the international VCs. And of course, I mean, I can only imagine that the entrepreneurs would then also have quite a lot of opportunity there as well.
I think India is a large, attractive market, right? And it's got huge potential for tech disruption to happen. And I think the way Reliance Jio has raised money in this pandemic, right, really speaks volume about the emphasis on digitization and the digital opportunity which is there in India. You have the biggest tech companies in the world which have invested in Reliance. So they really foresee if 400 million people are already there with Reliance, and if you're looking at a population of 1.3 billion, a lot of people moving from 2G to 2G to 4G. So I think there's a humongous potential, and it's a very large and attractive market. And that's what excites a lot of investors. A lot of momentum for growth and opportunity for growth, especially digital adoption, right? So that's huge. There has been a huge uptick in smartphone users, right? We are at 450 million, 500 million smartphone users. And if we have a 1.3 billion population, we're looking at adding another 3, 4, 500 million users in the next decade or so, you know? So that's the opportunity. The market opportunity is huge, and you really have to be there, a part of it, you know.
Right.
And a lot of VC funds, like if you look at the Indian venture capital space, majority has been towards foreign-based investors. So you have Axel, Sequoia, Matrix sort of be very visible over here in the ecosystem, and very aggressive in the venture capital ecosystem, and a very limited pool of domestic capital, domestic VC funds. But we're seeing a surge, rise in the momentum of the same. Like I mentioned, around 44 new funds participated in VC deals last year, and there has been a growing momentum for the same. So there's an opportunity for a lot of foreign, even newer VC funds in Southeast Asia, which are looking at India as a market. If you're looking at Southeast Asia, you can't ignore India. It's such a huge market, you know. And it's a ripe virgin market, not like China, which is very saturated and there's a limited opportunity for startups to do much, right? It's very competitive over there.
Yeah.
So it's an open market. It's a large, attractive market, and a lot of Southeast Asian investors are increasingly deploying funds into India from their global funds. So we're seeing a good momentum of co-investment opportunity with a lot of these VC funds, along with some VC funds based over here in India. So co-investment opportunity is great, because India is while it's a large, attractive market, it's a complex market, right?
Of
you
course.
have around 28 states, 8 union territories. Each is like a country in itself with the sort of diversity which it offers. So it's and it can be chaotic for investor who's coming for the first time to India to really understand what really works well over here culturally, demographically, from a consumer behavior perspective, so it makes a lot of sense for foreign VCs to start with doing a lot of co-investments with domestic VCs. There's, of course, limited capital in the ecosystem as you compare it with the more mature ecosystems of US and China, where there's dearth of capital floating around. There's limited. So it makes a lot of sense for them to collaborate and co-invest alongside a domestic VC fund, which has a team over here, local team over here, to be more aggressive in managing the portfolio, their portfolio investments, and really take the lead in terms of the proprietary deal flows a lot of domestic VC funds have access to because of their presence over here, So all this really matters, and it's a win-win from both the sides. I think the ideal case, if you look at from Southeast Asian perspective, is Japan. I think with the way Japanese investors have always believed in doing a lot of collaboration and cooperation with VC funds over here,
Right.
investing in VC funds, building a momentum of their own deal pipeline, getting experience of the Indian ecosystem, because a fly in and fly out approach really doesn't work, in the ecosystem over here. And I hear a lot of investors want to do a Series B sort of investments, but there's limited Series B investment in India, like just a handful of companies which will reach to that Series B plus sort of round. So you really miss out on this opportunity of participating at early stage or growth stage ventures at Series A, which is very critical for startups to really take the venture to the next level. So it makes a lot of sense to collaborate, to invest, co-invest in local VC funds, which are familiar with the local market and have good inroads into the networks over here in India. It helps from a DD perspective also. If you want to do a founder's due diligence, that can only happen through networks, right? You really, how much of it can be done by the big fours. They can give you whatever's there on the paper, which is very limited, but at the end of the day, it's driven by the founders.
Definitely. I think there's definitely that similarity as well between India and Southeast Asia, where, the market is so diversified, as you mentioned, right? There's always cultural differences, and because of that, like different consumer tastes, different, I guess, different nuances to just look out for. And I know you've had quite a lot of experience advising foreign investors and just in general the local investment scene. What do you think are the top 3 things a foreign investors should research on when they first look at the Indian market?
I think they should start with networking with the local investors over here. More importantly, with the domestic VC funds over here in India, which have access to good proprietary deal flow as well, and have a team in place, and are very open towards a collaborative approach along with co-investment, or even doing a strategic investment in the VC fund. So it makes a lot of sense and a win-win proposition for both sides, which are looking to, especially investors which are looking to establish themselves over here in India and be here for the long term. That's a better and long-term approach rather than taking a short-term approach of just doing co-investments based on investment decisions primarily led by VC funds over here in India. So I think if VC funds do a strategic cooperation or come in with strategic investments into domestic VC funds over here, it's a long-term approach. You get a better understanding of the ecosystem over a duration of a longer time frame, around 8 to 10 years, right? When you are associated with the VC fund. So it's not a very short-term approach, it's a long-term approach. And then of course, you can leverage the foreign investors always have the edge of access to other investors overseas for growth capital concern. I think in India, you have a lot of early stage investments being done at seed and pre-series A. Right. And you have a lot of growth stage capital, which is available to the big companies, right? Something in the middle that's missing, So that's where a lot of networks come in play with the networks the foreign investors bring in place with access to capital through their own networks over there. And so it's a win-win for both. And then you have a local team over here which manages a lot of things, and which is, even if you hire someone, it's not that easy, to
Yeah.
have just a one-man office over here, or
Right.
even based out of whichever geography that particular overseas investor is based out of, that doesn't have the same impact as having a full-fledged team, network access of the entire team, analytics around, what's the emerging trend around it. And interestingly, I would even like to point out one more thing. In the ecosystem over here, India, while it's had its stage of learnings from what's happened with the successes in US,
Yeah.
what's happened with the successes in China. But now I think with this pandemic, there's been an entire shake-up. So what has worked well in the past? I know a lot of foreign VC funds come with, I made successful investments in this particular geography and I want to do
Yes.
something similar in India.
Mm.
Cut, copy, paste really doesn't work successfully in India. So the theme might be good, but the element of localization, that's very important. And that understanding only a strong local partner can bring to the table.
Right.
So your matching approach can just work to some extent, but won't really get you the home run you're looking for.
Right. Your local partner is the key to really
Yes,
unlocking the local market.
yes, it is. It is.
Awesome. Okay. And I think the other thing that I think would be interesting is that how would you advise foreign startups to break into the Indian market? I think for startups, it might seem to be a lot more daunting, right? Because where do you start? But I think there are also entrepreneurs that are curious, what should they do in order to get started into an Indian market? Should they look for a local investor? Should they look for local business partners? Things like that. Well, I mean, what have you seen?
I think like I said earlier, India is such a large market. Everyone wants a chunk of it, right? So I can understand there's a lot of enthusiasm around foreign entrepreneurs coming in and setting up something over here. But I think a lot of times they have a very limited focus. They want to just set up a sales sort of office over here, but if you're really focused towards India, you can't have a cookie cutter model to your business. You have to do something, like I said, which is localized to the Indian audience. You have to be innovative with the marketing, which is localized to the Indian audience. So it's very important, especially if you're looking at India to be, let's say, 25 or more than 25% of your revenue in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So it's important to have someone from the founding team who is locally strong over here, get strong local partners over here, really invest in India, have a good team over here, which is not just like a satellite office for sales and marketing, but more than that. It helps in attracting good talent as well. I think like employees really want to be part of a company which has a larger vision, and that really comes through not just with the satellite office, but with the mainstream sort of office with a strong Indian local partner coming in as a founding member of the team. So you have to take these sort of concrete decisions if you're really looking at India as a larger market for yourself.
Right. Yeah, I think that.
And I would just like to add to that. So we have invested in a company which is a Singapore-based company. It's focused towards Southeast Asia market as a region. They're focused on providing digital credit cards to a lot of startups who don't have that line of credit usually available from the bank because of the limited track record of a particular startup in terms of balance sheets and various other things.
Right.
So this company, they're very certain that India is going to be a main market for us. The first thing the founder did, he's a foreign founder. He had an Indian founder along with him as a part of the team. They had a strong Indian team over here along with their team overseas, right?
Right.
Which is doing more than just sales and marketing. So, and of course, that founding Indian entrepreneur was leading the operations over here in India. So this sort of strategy is required. You have to be very hands-on. And the foreign founder for the longest time has been flying in and out, being over here for more than 6 months, so on and so forth. So this is the sort of commitment you need to have from the founding team, the vision which you need to have to build that team if you're really looking to cater towards India as a market. And because you have to do a lot of localization, and it just can't happen through something sitting in the headquarters
Right.
in Southeast Asia.
Right. It definitely sounds like a huge task, and it seems like there has to be a lot of personal investment into it
Yeah,
as well.
unless and until you're like Snap, your product is great as it is, and
Yeah.
you have enough followers, and it's just coming organically
Right.
to you, so it doesn't really matter.
Right.
That's a one in a million case.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think on the flip side then, what do you think about Indian startups expanding out into Southeast Asia? How much interest has there been for Indian entrepreneurs to venture out?
If you honestly ask me, I think the nuances of geographically expanding towards India is complex enough, but I think it's important. Yeah, so many. It's a large market to capture, but I
Yes,
think what's
yeah.
important for and increasingly complex, and you have tiers of audience which you're looking at. So you need to
Mm,
focus on which tier you're focused towards in each of these geographies. If you're looking at
right.
tier one, tier two cities, or just focus on tier two, tier three, and yes, at a point, if you are focused on, let's say, a niche play, that like a tier one audience, right? So depending on what you have defined with, I have seen a lot of, especially we have seen a lot of growth stage, late stage companies successfully expand beyond India to overseas market. I think Zomato's case has been a good
Mm,
success, where they have successfully expanded their MENA region and sold it at a good valuation, I think last year or so. But at the same time, it takes away a lot of your time and energy to focus towards a new country, new market altogether. I think Oyo is there, Paytm is there, Zomato. So all these companies have sort of expanded beyond just the Indian market, and it makes a lot of sense because I think if you're looking at a tier one sort of an audience, so there will be a limit, possibly 100, 200 million people you're looking at in India. But if you so you'll get the numbers in India,
mm,
but if you talk about the margins that you can get overseas, so that
I
makes a lot of
see.
sense
Yeah.
for ventures to expand. And I think there's an increasing trend towards SaaS companies to focus on the same. I think US is a large attractive market for a lot of them, even from a point of access to capital. So if you have something in Bengaluru and then you have a office in Silicon Valley, right? So the network access that you get over there, and the I think the SaaS market is huge for them in
Mm,
terms of not just capital and even clients. So it's a win-win for them, and we have seen a lot of successes in the same light. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and we have seen a lot of successes as well. So it works well.
awesome. That's really encouraging to hear as well. I think a lot of in Asia, right? It seems that the long-term play is definitely to move out of your home market, and no matter how big the home market is, I think there are a lot of entrepreneurs who are, um, curious about what it will be like to venture out. Um, I would also like to sort of like touch upon Venture Gurukool as a fund. What is your outlook on the Southeast Asia ecosystem? Are you guys planning on just currently focusing on India's ecosystem and growing your local portfolio there, or are you guys also open to keeping the deal flow in from Southeast Asia?
Yeah, I think I'm going to quote our Prime Minister's logo over here, which says vocal co local. So there's a huge opportunity for to be vocal about local
Mm,
ventures over here, and from local we have a huge opportunity to go global, right? So
right.
companies primarily looking at India as a market. So India has to be a key market for the
Mm,
ventures which you're looking to invest in. And then of course based on the customers which they're looking to focus on, if they're looking at if it's a SaaS, then of course it makes a lot of sense for them to expand to, let's say, MENA region, or even have an office in the Silicon Valley, where there's huge opportunity to reach out to SME clients over there, and cater to those sort of clients. So so yes, of course, first focus on India, and then export this to the rest of the world. So that's what our focus is going to be towards the ventures we're going to be looking at.
awesome. Okay, cool. And I think there's one other sort of topic that I really like to hear from you about. It might be coming from a little bit more of a personal experience, and I think globally, not been a lot of female representation in the VC world and in tech. And I think diversity and this sort of representation and leadership is always a topic of interest for this scene. To hear a little bit more about how your journey as a female leader in India has been.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, I agree. It's really hard to to get an opportunity for women in VC is very limited representation. In fact, I think China has a much higher representation of women in VC than in India. I read some stats somewhere. If China has around 15% representation of women in VC at VC funds, India has that number at around 7%. But then while it's 7%, a lot more of that is at associate levels, and senior management is very limited. You know, so you have very few principal and partners who are part of VC funds over here in India. But increasingly, I think there's been a growing trend towards diversity in the ecosystem over here. We have seen a lot of women come in VC over a period of time, but I think at the top, you can just name a handful of partners at VC funds over here in India. Less than a handful, I think, if I really start to jot down the names. So there is so it's really challenging for women in VC to be part of it, but at the same time, with the emphasis which has been laid down from a diversity perspective, because what women bring on the table is something which is the insights which they bring is unique, right? Especially if you're looking at audiences which is focused towards venture which is focused towards women as an audience, right? So it makes a lot of sense to have that diversity in the investment team to get that insights, an outlook of a women on the same. At the same time, I don't think there's a bias towards men or women in terms of the capacity or the capability, but it's been limited, and VC is a very it's run on a lot of networks, right? So why it's very challenging is because possibly, you know, it can be daunting and challenging for you to sort of make the right networks and get into the circuit of investors over here. So it can be challenging from that perspective. So it is low, but I think there's an increasing tide towards realizing that there's a limited participation of women in VC, and a lot of VC funds are focused towards hiring more women in VC. But at the same time, I think a lot more of that has been towards junior level positions or associate, and for these sort of positions to scale up to a partner or a principal level position gets even more limited. So yeah. So yeah.
Well, I think it's definitely encouraging to hear that, you know, things are changing, and I think that can be said for the global tech scene, right, where people are being more standing to this perspective that, you know, women do make up pretty much half of the world, right, and that's half of the audience and the customer base that you are attempting to sell to. And even like you said, it might take up the majority of your customer base as well. And if you don't have that women's perspective or women's insight, it doesn't make sense to not include the women's perspective. One last question for you on that. What are some of the key takeaways you could share?
I just want to add to that. So we, especially since I am leading this with our fund over here, I make conscious attempt to hire more women in VC and be a part of.
That's so great to hear.
No, yeah. So not that I have a bias, but still, I think they have the talent. They're quite presentable. Communication wise, they can be quite seamless, and yeah, I think why not? Yes, especially with our fund, we definitely make conscious attempt to hire more women in VC, and that's what we've seen. A lot of domestic VC funds have taken a lead in hiring more women in VC, with a lot of some of the other top investors, I think global investors has been limited, but they're realizing it. So I hope they really work on it.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, so the last question was, what are some key takeaways that you could share from maybe your personal experience? What are some of the pieces of advice you could share with younger female investors and entrepreneurs?
Is this okay in general? So this is from an investor perspective?
Yeah, I think from an investor's perspective, I think also maybe because you do yourself, you also have a little bit of entrepreneurship experience. So I think also maybe navigating not just India's market, but I think the tech landscape in general as a female.
Now, I think from if you talk about you can't avoid what's happening right now with the current pandemic, right? So this has really changed course for a lot of a mindset mentality change in terms of, like I said earlier, focus towards sustainability, profit, uh, something which can generate more cash, really make you conscious on how you're really spending your money in terms of marketing, like the cost per consumer, lifetime value of the consumer. These sort of metrics become more important. What is the retention you have for your consumers? Is the marketing strategy which you are following, is it effective or not? Or you need to go back to the drawing table and work on something which is more sustainable to you and the venture in the long run. So these sort of things have become increasingly important. And I'd like to add, with our fund, we are focused towards building capability in early stage ventures. And by that, I mean, we have operating partners, or we call them the venture partners, So these are professionals who are industry leaders, having excellence, operational excellence in leading MNCs, not just in India, but from an APAC level, so they know how to build organization, have the mechanisms for building organization structure, the operating mechanism for the same, and so they get a lot of insights on the same. And interestingly, a lot of our venture partners, they come with around 30 years of operating excellence experience, like we call it. They have lived through a lot of the dot-com crash, the Asian crisis, right? So they know how to navigate these sort of uncertain times, and they give a lot of value-add insights to founders. A lot of founders are, especially tech founders, they don't really have the sort of operating experience. So they come with a lot of operating insights on how do you deal with the crisis, what should you do, what should you focus on, what you should not focus on, how you should focus on managing your cash and various other things, And that's the value add which we provide to our portfolio companies with our venture partners. And like I said, there's been increasing focus from blitzscaling towards scaling sensibly. So I think, yes, a time like this gives entrepreneurs and even investors an opportunity to really focus on the operations and really see if it makes sense or not. And really, this is a time where, like I said earlier, a lot of froth gets shifted away. So companies which have that strong metrics will get the support from their investors. And if you are sort of not in line with this sort of philosophy, then high time you start focusing on that. Otherwise it's do or die.
Right. Business is still a business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ntasha. I think that's all the time we have for today. So thank you so much for all the insights. I think we don't normally get the chance to hear from an Indian investor's perspective, and especially one who has so much experience in advising entry into the Indian market. I hope everybody was able to take something away from today's session. And for all our audience out there, our next episode on August 27th, we will have Ko Subun from iGlobe Partners sharing with us what it's like to be one of the leading women in Singapore's VC scene. So stay tuned. Thanks again, Ntasha. Bye.
Pleasure.